Hi out there in YouTube land, I'm Drew Badger, and in this video we're going to cover 9 phrases that are commonly misused by both native speakers and English learners. The first one is coming down the pike, and this is often misheard and misused as coming down the pipe. People will hear this as coming down the pipe because maybe coming down the pike doesn't make a lot of sense to many people, but the expression refers to a truck or something coming down a turnpike, which is a word for just a large road, and often this is a toll road, but anyway, we're talking about something that is describing a future thing or what's coming very soon. So to use this correctly, you're saying that something is coming down the pike when you're talking about the future. Next, people will often say, I could care less about an expression, when what they really mean is I couldn't care less. If you say I could care less, and this just means, well, what people are trying to say anyway, is that they don't care about something at all, but this is just a common way of expressing that. Basically, you're saying that you care about something so little, like this tiny amount, if anything, that you could not care about it even less. So you care about it to such a low degree or such a low level that you can't care about it less or even more. So it sounds kind of like a weird thing, but people will often use this in conversations. Even native speakers, they will say, I could care less, which actually means you still have room to care less about that thing. So the correct way of using this is I couldn't care less about this. So I couldn't care less about what I wear every day for work. I couldn't care less. So for me, maybe I work at home on my computer. I could sit in my underwear or I could wear a business suit. It doesn't matter. So I couldn't care less about what I wear. I couldn't care less. Next, this is an interesting one, to circumvent the globe. What people are actually trying to say is to circumnavigate the globe. When you circumvent something, both of these have the idea of circle, so traveling around something, circumvent and circumnavigate, but to circumvent means to get around something. Typically a problem that you might have, like I'm trying to circumvent my boss at work. Maybe he's like stopping me from doing something I want to do, so I have to go to a higher level than him at work. But to circumnavigate the globe means you're actually traveling around something, as opposed to you're trying to like get around the earth like it's an obstacle. So you want to circumnavigate the globe or the earth as opposed to circumvent it. Next, this is a really common thing that people mistake, and this is to pique your interest. But we're not talking about the peak like the peak of a mountain, or talking about peeking like you're peeking through a keyhole in a door. We're talking about to pique and to actually be interested. So when you're talking about this in conversations, there's really no difference because all of these words, peak, peak, and peak, they have the same pronunciation. But when you're writing these things, you actually want to use it correctly. Often when people will be using these mistakes in their conversations, again, it doesn't matter because you can't hear anything, you can't hear the difference, but when you're writing it, people will read that and think, wow, this person really doesn't know what they're talking about. So when you're getting your interest piqued by something, it means you're increasing your interest in something. Maybe you see something really interesting and you're looking at that, you're captivated by that thing. It is piquing your interest, and use the correct spelling with that when you write. Pique, pique. Next, to jibe with something. To jibe with just means you find it agreeable. So it's something you agree with, or something you have no problem with. You jibe with a particular thing. Like maybe, like a presidential example, maybe, like you jibe with what Donald Trump says, or you don't jibe at all with what Donald Trump has to say or his beliefs. But this is often confused with jive with. Now, when people are speaking in a conversational, casual way, they will often use these things very quickly. To jibe with, to jibe with, to jibe with. I really jibe with his views. Next, to nip something in the bud, but people will often say this as to nip it in the butt. So they're saying butt, like B-U-T-T, like, your butt, as opposed to a bud, which is thinking about like the bud on a plant. If you think about a problem that's happening, you don't want the problem to get big and become really difficult to solve, so you want to nip it in the bud. So just like trying to destroy a whole plant or a whole long branch, it's much easier to do it when it is a small bud. So if you can think about nipping something like taking a small cut, just like you're a gardener and pulling the little buds off of a plant before they become large, it's the same idea of destroying a problem or ending a problem before it becomes too big. To nip something in the bud. To nip something in the bud. Next, for all intents and purposes. For all intents and purposes. Now, this is an interesting phrase because really intent and purpose mean the same thing, but this is just a common expression that describes, well, for all the reasons we want to do something, or for all the reasons that something might happen. But what people will often say is for all intensive purposes. Now, this is a different way. Obviously, you're pronouncing something a little bit different, but it changes the meaning of it. So instead of intents and purposes, you're talking about intensive purposes, which is like really strong purposes, which doesn't really make much sense. So if you're using this, be sure to use it correctly for all intents and purposes, for all intents and purposes. Next, this is another common one that's misused by people, self-deprecating versus self-depreciating. Now, to depreciate something, this is the opposite of appreciate, where we're maybe thinking about reducing the value of something, so it kind of makes sense in the situation, but we're talking about self-deprecating, which is actually the word when you maybe tell a joke about yourself or say something bad about yourself, like, wow, my hair is looking really bad, or like, my ears are too big. So you're kind of taking the opportunity to maybe humble yourself a little bit with self-deprecating humor, or to say something that is self-deprecating. So be careful when you're writing these things, because often, like the spell checker you'll be using when you're maybe typing something, it will give you the correct word because depreciate or depreciating is a word. Both of those are actual words. So you need to make sure, just like another common example is talking about more than or more than. Now, I've even made this mistake a lot when I was younger, when you're talking about I like something more than something else. But people will often type in more than. Now, you don't want to use then in this because it doesn't make sense for the situation, but it is a correct word, so it often won't be checked with spelling. So be careful when you're typing these things out that you go back and review the spelling of them. Self-deprecating is what you should be using. Next, another common one, hunger pangs. This is often misspoken as hunger pains. Like you've got pains in your stomach and you feel hungry and you should eat something. So it feels like this should be a correct thing to say you're feeling some hunger pains, but really pang is the actual correct word, and this describes the same thing. So this is one of those situations where if you say, oh, I've got some hunger pains, nobody is really going to correct you in a situation. But if you're writing this or you're trying to use it in a much more professional way, you should be using the correct thing, which is hunger pangs. Hunger pangs. Well, that's it for this video. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you have, do click that like button. Let me know if there are other phrases that you would like to learn. I also recommend you try practicing writing the correct versions of these in the comments below. The only way you're going to get used to using them correctly is to practice using them correctly. It makes sense. Just take the time to do it and you will improve and start using them automatically. Become a subscriber to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. And if you'd also like to improve and be learning much more about all of the fluency habits you need to become a successful, confident, fluent speaker, click on the link in this video to take our free English fluency quiz. No matter what you struggle with, whether it's your pronunciation or your vocabulary, maybe you have trouble remembering what you want to say in conversations, all of these things we can help you with absolutely free at EnglishAnyone.com, and you can learn more about that by taking our free fluency quiz. So click on the link in this video to take that, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye-bye.